Welcome back. Imagine a time when the people of Israel were living in constant fear, their lands ravaged by invaders. In the midst of this chaos, a seemingly ordinary man named Gideon is called upon by an angel of the Lord. But here's the twist. Gideon is hiding, threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. Hardly the image of a mighty warrior, right? Yet, this is where our story takes a dramatic turn. The angel addresses Gideon as a mighty man of valor, setting the stage for an incredible journey of faith and transformation. Gideon, from the weakest clan in Manasseh and the least in his family, is chosen to lead Israel against their oppressors. But how can a man filled with doubt and fear become a hero? Join us as we delve into the miraculous events that follow: Gideon's tests of faith, his strategic downsizing of an army from 32,000 to just 300 men, and the astonishing victory that defies all odds. This is not just a story of battle. It's a testament to the power of faith and the extraordinary ways God can use the most unlikely individuals to achieve his purposes. Stay tuned to uncover the full story of Gideon, a tale of courage, divine intervention, and the triumph of faith over fear. You won't want to miss a moment of this inspiring biblical narrative.
Once again, the people of Israel sinned against the Lord, so he let the people of Midian rule them for 7 years. The Midianites were stronger than Israel, and the people of Israel hid from them in caves and other safe places in the hills. Whenever the Israelites would plant their crops, the Midianites would come with the Amalekites and the desert tribes and attack them. They would camp on the land and destroy the crops as far south as the area around Gaza. They would take all the sheep, cattle, and donkeys, and leave nothing for the Israelites to live on. They would come with their livestock in tents, as thick as locusts. They and their camels were too many to count. They came and devastated the land, and Israel was helpless against them. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help against the Midianites, and he sent them a prophet who brought them this message from the Lord, the God of Israel: I brought you out of slavery in Egypt. I rescued you from the Egyptians and from the people who fought you here in this land. I drove them out as you advanced, and I gave you their land. I told you that I am the Lord your God, and that you should not worship the gods of the Amorites, whose land you are now living in. But you have not listened to me. Then the Lord's angel came to the village of Ophrah, and sat under the oak tree that belonged to Joash, a man of the clan of Abiezer. His son Gideon was threshing some wheat secretly in a winepress, so that the Midianites would not see him. The Lord's angel appeared to him there and said, "The Lord is with you, brave and mighty man." Gideon said to him, "If I may ask, sir, why has all this happened to us if the Lord is with us? What happened to all the wonderful things that our fathers told us the Lord used to do, how he brought them out of Egypt? The Lord has abandoned us and left us to the mercy of the Midianites." Then the Lord ordered him, "Go with all your great strength and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I myself am sending you." Gideon replied, "But Lord, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least important member of my family." The Lord answered, "You can do it, because I will help you. You will crush the Midianites as easily as if they were only one man." Gideon replied, "If you are pleased with me, give me some proof that you are really the Lord. Please do not leave until I bring you an offering of food." He said, "I will stay until you come back." So Gideon went into his house and cooked a young goat, and used a bushel of flour to make bread without any yeast. He put the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, brought them to the Lord's angel under the oak tree, and gave them to him. The angel told him, "Put the meat and the bread on this rock, and pour the broth over them." Gideon did so. Then the Lord's angel reached out and touched the meat and the bread with the end of the stick he was holding. Fire came out of the rock and burned up the meat and the bread. Then the angel disappeared. Gideon then realized that it was the Lord's angel he had seen, and he said in terror, "Sovereign Lord, I have seen your angel face to face." But the Lord told him, "Peace, don't be afraid, you will not die." Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and named it, "The Lord is Peace." It is still standing at Ophrah, which belongs to the clan of Abiezer. That night the Lord told Gideon, "Take your father's bull and another bull 7 years old, tear down your father's altar to Baal, and cut down the symbol of the goddess Asherah, which is beside it. Build a well-constructed altar to the Lord your God on top of this mount. Then take the second bull 19 and burn it whole as an offering, using for firewood the symbol of Asherah you have cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did what the Lord had told him. He was too afraid of his family and the people in town to do it by day, so he did it at night. When the people in town got up early the next morning, they found that the altar to Baal and the symbol of Asherah had been cut down, and that the second bull had been burned on the altar that had been built there. They asked each other, "Who did this?" They investigated and found out that Gideon son of Joash had done it. Then they said to Joash, "Bring your son out here, so that we can kill him." He tore down the altar to Baal and cut down the symbol of Asherah beside it. But Joash said to all those who confronted him, "Are you arguing for Baal? Are you defending him? Anyone who argues for him will be killed before morning. If Baal is a god, let him defend himself. It is his altar that was torn down." From then on Gideon was known as Jerubbaal, because Joash said, "Let Baal defend himself. It is his altar that was torn down." Then all the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the desert tribes assembled, crossed the Jordan River, and camped in Jezreel Valley. The Spirit of the Lord took control of Gideon, and he blew a trumpet to call the men of the clan of Abiezer to follow him. He sent messengers throughout the territory of both parts of Manasseh to call them to follow him. He sent messengers to the tribes of Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they also came to join him. Then Gideon said to God, "You say that you have decided to use me to rescue Israel. Well, I am putting some wool on the ground where we thresh the wheat. If in the morning there is dew only on the wool but not on the ground, then I will know that you are going to use me to rescue Israel." That is exactly what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the wool and wrung enough dew out of it to fill a bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, "Don't be angry with me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me make one more test with the wool. This time let the wool be dry and the ground be wet." That night, God did that very thing. The next morning, the wool was dry, but the ground was wet with dew. One day Gideon and all his men got up early and camped beside Harod Spring. The Midianite camp was in the valley to the north of them by Moreh Hill. The Lord said to Gideon, "The men you have are too many for me to give them victory over the Midianites. They might think that they had won by themselves, and so give me no credit. Announce to the people, anyone who is afraid should go back home, and we will stay here at Mount Gilead." So 22,000 went back, but 10,000 stayed. Then the Lord said to Gideon, "You still have too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will separate them for you there. If I tell you a man should go with you, he will go. If I tell you a man should not go with you, he will not go." Gideon took the men down to the water, and the Lord told him, "Separate everyone who laps up the water with his tongue like a dog, from everyone who gets down on his knees to drink." There were 300 men who scooped up water in their hands and lapped it. All the others got down on their knees to drink. There were 300 men who scooped up water in their hands and lapped it. All the others got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, "I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites with the 300 men who lapped the water. Tell everyone else to go home." So Gideon sent all the Israelites home, except the 300, who kept all the supplies and trumpets. The Midianite camp was below them in the valley. That night the Lord commanded Gideon, "Get up and attack the camp. I am giving you victory over it. But if you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. You will hear what they are saying, and then you will have the courage to attack." So Gideon and his servant Purah went down to the edge of the enemy camp. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and the desert tribesmen were spread out in the valley like a swarm of locusts, and they had as many camels as there are grains of sand on the seashore. When Gideon arrived, he heard a man telling a friend about a dream. He was saying, "I dreamed that a loaf of barley bread rolled into our camp and hit a tent. The tent collapsed and lay flat on the ground." His friend replied, "It's the sword of the Israelite, Gideon son of Joash. It can't mean anything else. God has given him victory over Midian and our whole army." When Gideon heard about the man's dream and what it meant, he fell to his knees and worshipped the Lord. Then he went back to the Israelite camp and said, "Get up. The Lord is giving you victory over the Midianite army." He divided his 300 men into 3 groups, and gave each man a trumpet and a jar with a torch inside it. He told them, "When I get to the edge of the camp, watch me, and do what I do. When my group and I blow our trumpets, then you blow yours all around the camp and shout, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" Gideon and his 100 men came to the edge of the camp a while before midnight, just after the guard had been changed. Then they blew the trumpets and broke the jars they were holding, and the other 2 groups did the same. They all held the torches in their left hands, the trumpets in their right, and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Every man stood in his place around the camp, and the whole enemy army ran away yelling. While Gideon's men were blowing their trumpets, the Lord made the enemy troops attack each other with their swords. They ran toward Zarethan as far as Beth-shittah, as far as the town of Abel-Maholah near Tabith. Then men from the tribes of Naphtali, Asher, and both parts of Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers through all the hill country of Ephraim to say, "Come down and fight the Midianites. Hold the Jordan River and the streams as far as Bethbarah, to keep the Midianites from crossing them." The men of Ephraim were called together, and they held the Jordan River and the streams as far as Bethbarah. They captured the 2 Midianite chiefs, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at Oreb Rock, and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. They continued to pursue the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was now east of the Jordan. Then the people of Ephraim said to Gideon, "Why didn't you call us when you went to fight the Midianites? Why did you treat us like this?" They complained bitterly about it, but he told them, "What I was able to do is nothing compared with what you have done. Even the little that you people of Ephraim did is worth more than what my whole clan has done." By this time Gideon and his 300 men had come to the Jordan River and had crossed it. They were exhausted, but were still pursuing the enemy. When they arrived at Succoth, he said to the men of the town, "Please give my men some loaves of bread. They are exhausted, and I am chasing Zebah and Zalmunna, the Midianite kings." But the leaders of Succoth said, "Why should we give your army any food? You haven't captured Zebah and Zalmunna yet." So Gideon said, "All right. When the Lord has handed Zebah and Zalmunna over to me, I will beat you with thorns and briars from the desert." Gideon went on to Peniel and made the same request of the people there, but the men of Peniel gave the same answer as the men of Succoth. So he said to them, "I am going to come back safe and sound, and when I do, I will tear this tower down." Zebah and Zalmunna were at Karkor with their army. Of the whole army of desert tribesmen, only about 15,000 were left. 120,000 soldiers had been killed. Gideon went on the road along the edge of the desert, east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and attacked the army by surprise. The 2 Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, ran away, but he pursued them and captured them, and caused their whole army to panic. When Gideon was returning from the battle by way of Here's Pass, he captured a young man from Succoth and questioned him. The young man wrote down for Gideon the names of the 77 leading men of Succoth. Then Gideon went to the men of Succoth and said, "Remember when you refused to help me? You said that you couldn't give any food to my exhausted army, because I hadn't captured Zebah and Zalmunna yet. Well, here they are." He then took thorns and briars from the desert, and used them to punish the leaders of Succoth. He also tore down the tower at Peniel and killed the men of that city. Then Gideon asked Zebah and Zalmunna, "What about the men you killed at Tabor?" They answered, "They looked like you, every one of them like the son of a king." Gideon said, "They were my brothers, my own mother's sons. I solemnly swear that if you had not killed them, I would not kill you." Then he said to Jether, his oldest son, "Go ahead, kill them." But the boy did not draw his sword. He hesitated, because he was still only a boy. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, "Come on, kill us yourself. It takes a man to do a man's job." So Gideon killed them, and took the ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. After that, the Israelites said to Gideon, "Be our ruler, you and your descendants after you. You have saved us from the Midianites." Gideon answered, "I will not be your ruler, nor will my son. The Lord will be your ruler." But he went on to say, Let me ask one thing of you. Every one of you give me the earrings you took. The Midianites, like other desert people, wore gold earrings. The people answered, we'll be glad to give them to you. They spread out a cloth, and everyone put on it the earrings that he had taken. The gold earrings that Gideon got weighed over 40 pounds, and this did not include the ornaments, necklaces, and purple clothes that the kings of Midian wore, nor the collars that were around the necks of their camels. Gideon made an idol from the gold and put it in his hometown, Ophrah. All the Israelites abandoned God and went there to worship the idol. It was a trap for Gideon and his family. So Midian was defeated by the Israelites and was no longer a threat. The land was at peace for 40 years, until Gideon died. Gideon went back to his own home and lived there. He had 70 sons, because he had many wives. He also had a concubine in Shechem. She bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech. Gideon son of Joash died at a ripe old age, and was buried in the tomb of his father Joash, at Ophrah, the town of the clan of Abiezer. After Gideon's death, the people of Israel were unfaithful to God again and worshipped the Baals. They made Baal of the covenant their god, and no longer served the Lord their God, who had saved them from all their enemies around them. They were not grateful to the family of Gideon for all the good that he had done for Israel. The story of Gideon offers several valuable lessons. Faith and obedience. Gideon's journey began with doubt, but he eventually trusted God's plan. We learn that faith and obedience can lead to remarkable victories, even when circumstances seem impossible. God's strength and weakness. Gideon felt inadequate, yet God chose him. This reminds us that our weaknesses don't limit God's power. He often works through the unlikely and the humble. Idolatry and priorities. Gideon's act of destroying Baal's altar emphasizes the importance of putting God first. We should examine our own lives for hidden idols or distractions that hinder our relationship with Him. Divine strategy. The unconventional battle plan of 300 men with torches and trumpets shows that God's ways are not always logical to human understanding. Trusting His guidance is crucial. Unity and teamwork. Gideon's small, united force achieved victory. Cooperation, mutual support, and a shared purpose can overcome overwhelming odds. Now, how did the Israelites react after their victory? After their victory, the Israelites experienced a mix of emotions. Gratitude. They were grateful to God for delivering them from the Midianite oppression. Gideon's leadership and the miraculous victory reinforced their faith. Celebration. The Israelites celebrated their newfound freedom. They likely sang songs, danced, and offered sacrifices to honor God. Renewed commitment. Witnessing God's power renewed their commitment to follow Him faithfully. They turned away from idolatry and sought to live according to His commands. Unity. The victory brought the tribes together. They recognized that their strength lay in unity and cooperation. Expectation. With the Midianites defeated, they anticipated a better future, a time of peace and prosperity. In summary, their reaction was a blend of joy, awe, and determination to remain faithful to God. Thanks for watching and see you in my next video. Remain blessed.